The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Rachel Neese. I'm the Visual Arts Coordinator for VSA programs here at the Kennedy Center, and I'm so happy to have you join us today. This is a part of the monthly webinar series facilitated by the Office of VSA and Accessibility at the Kennedy Center that focuses on topics related to arts, disability, and education. I know that we have a few first-time participants with us today, so I'll run you through a few administrative things related to the GoToWebinar service. If you would like to view live stream captioning of this webinar, please visit the link on the screen and follow along. You can also follow the link that's on the screen towards the bottom of your attendee control panel. Speaking of the attendee control panel, everyone should see this box on the right-hand side of your screen. If at any time you need to leave the webinar, you can click on the X in the upper right-hand corner. Please make sure you've selected either telephone or mic and speakers at the top of the attendee control panel, depending on how you are connected to today's webinar. If you think of a question during the presentation, please type your question into the questions box at the bottom of the control panel. Your questions will go directly to me, and when we come to a break in the presentation, I can relay the questions to Anne, Nina, and Jude. If you're active on social media and would like to live tweet during the webinar, please tag us with hashtag VSAWebinar. Or, if you would prefer to visit us later, find us on Facebook or Instagram at VSA International. I would also like to let you know that following the webinar, we will send out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to all attendees, and a recording of today's presentation will also be available. Lastly, while I have your attention, I would like to invite you to the next month's webinar. Sasha Kalai, visual artist, educator, and certified creativity coach and consultant, will be speaking about tools and techniques for artists with and without disabilities, how to handle resistance in the creative process. This will be on Tuesday, January 27th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today we have three presenters from the Barber National Institute: Ann Ellison, Behavioral Services Coordinator; Nina Wolfarth, Early Care Coordinator; and Jude Shingle, Teaching Artist and former Artist in Residence at Barber National Institute, who will be speaking about using video self-modeling in the classroom with students with autism spectrum disorders. Friends, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, I'm Ann, and I'm happy to be here with you today. We're very excited to share this topic with you. We here at the Barber Institute have an approved private school where we work with children age 3 all the way through 21, and this is one of the strategies that we have had a lot of success with. Our objectives for today are that we'd like to help you know how to create effective video modeling to teach skills and perhaps shape behavior. Jude is also going to talk a bit about capturing video with a device that you already own. We will talk about iMovie, but we'll also talk about some other devices. And then Nina is going to talk about some of the challenges involved in kind of the backdoor management of this, how to store and retrieve videos. Video modeling is a very well-validated intervention that's used to teach a variety of behaviors. And basically, it's watching yourself or someone else perform a behavior. And what the research is showing is that for children with autism spectrum disorder particularly, this increases the speed of behavior acquisition.
Anne, could I interrupt you for one moment? I can't see your screen.
Yes. Oh, okay, so sorry.
You just have to accept. We can see your face, though.
Okay, hello, everyone. Technical issues. We will be talking about some of those. It's kind of the norm. See, the support team, this is part of the
right.
You need support teams to make this work.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Now you can bring it back.
Now we can see both you and your presentation.
Okay, wonderful.
So you may want to put it on full screen mode.
We're not on full screen? Okay. So sorry. Is that better?
Nope, we're still looking at your background.
No. Might not switch.
hit slideshow,
Mm-hmm.
and then hit start from the beginning. And
Yeah, we did that.
it's still not showing up.
That's not good. I believe your PowerPoint may be paused, so if you hit the play button again on GoToWebinar that says Show My Screen.
Show my screen, hit that button.
Oh, okay.
But we're still seeing the timer. We got to get rid of that timer and reverse it.
Is that good? There we go. Beautiful. Thank you.
You got me about that? Okay. Well, okay, welcome. We'll start all over again. No. Okay, so basically video modeling is just watching someone perform a task that we want to teach. And the research is showing that video modeling actually increases the speed of behavior acquisition. This is a strategy that can be used for anyone, children, very preschool age children all the way through adults. But what they're finding is that where typical neurotypical people may acquire knowledge through modeling at the same rate, whether it's in vivo or natural modeling or video modeling, people with autism spectrum disorders actually acquire skills and behaviors more quickly with video modeling than they do in vivo situations. The rationale for why video modeling works is still really being researched, but the thoughts are really that it helps restrict the focus. Some of the research on people with autism is that it can be difficult for them to know what to focus on. There's so much going on in the environment that they have difficulty choosing. And by using video modeling, we are doing that choosing for them, and so they will focus directly where we need their attention for learning. It also involves a repetitive presentation, and we know that, of course, that helps learning. And there tends to be a greater receptivity to this strategy for children with autism. Basically, kids love it. All kids love it, and a lot of kids with autism love it, too. So it's a really positive strategy, and we found a lot of success with it. The idea of video modeling is based on Alfred Bandura and his theory of observational learning. A lot of you probably are familiar with that from college psychology classes. Basically what it says is that the cognitive and behavioral change that occurs as a result of watching others, it happens as a result of watching others engage in similar activities. It's how children learn from their parents. From the very beginning, they learn how to make sounds, and really everything we learn, or a lot of what we learn, comes through observation. Video modeling is considered an evidence-based practice for students with autism spectrum disorder, and this is very important for those of us involved in the education world. It's effective, as I said earlier, across populations, and there's research that's been done. Bellini did a meta-analysis of research in 2007 that's kind of a benchmark for this strategy. We reference that in the reference section of this presentation if you'd like further information. The uses of video modeling are very far-reaching. It's used primarily really for social skills in a lot of mainstream classrooms and a lot of schools around the country. Social skills seems to be a natural fit for this, but it can also be used for communication and functional and academic skills, really a wide variety of things. It's a multi-sensory experience for the kids, and it's very good for diverse learners because it taps into all of the senses. You can see, hear, and experience the correct behavior instead of just talking about it, and that seems to be really positive for a lot of our kids. The creative applications for video modeling are really endless, and that is why we brought this strategy to this group of people. You all may be in a very unique position to bring this strategy into schools and to the students that you work with, and to help teachers really understand its potential. We have a couple of video clips, and there are some technical challenges involved in this, but I'm going to try to show you these video clips. This first one is showing some kids who are working on social skills and communication skills in their classroom, and they're specifically working on saying more when they want more bubbles, and kind of interacting and doing some reciprocal play or some parallel play with each other with these bubbles. So hopefully we can get this to play for you. Okay, short clip, that actually played pretty well. Can we, sure, is there more? So the kids are saying more. You can't really hear it, but the kids, the children are saying more and getting more bubbles and then playing with the bubbles. I'm going to go on to the next screen. This is an example of using this strategy for a more academic skill. This child is working on raising his hand, so he's not quite so impulsive. So he's going to watch himself do the correct behavior over and over. He raises his hand and the teacher comes. These are just a couple very brief examples. Unfortunately, with the video modeling, we would hope to show you more, but we do have some technological limitations here with this GoToMeeting. I will say that we've used this in a variety of ways. We made a movie of Godzilla where the kids worked together. We had a social skills group with our high school students, and the children worked together to kind of battle Godzilla and save the school. That was a very fun project that we did last year. We've had children who worked on washing hands, and we videotaped them step by step washing their hands, and then they were able to watch that and develop those skills more independently. We've also collected some data that shows that we really are having success with this strategy. So how do you go about doing this? How do you create a video? The first step is to establish a target skill or behavior. And this really is deciding what you're going to teach. You want to be as specific and direct as possible. You want the behavior to be measurable and observable so that you'll be able to know when you have success. It's best if you keep your behavior short and very specific. If you want to teach a multi-step behavior, such as washing hands or perhaps a social skill, you may want to break it up into smaller sections and perhaps link them together into a longer movie, but show them a step at a time when you're teaching the discrete skills. Your second step is really, as you're thinking about your target behavior, you want to baseline what your students' present capabilities are. This will help you decide exactly what you're going to teach, exactly where in that series you're going to need to put your intervention, and where to focus your instructions, and it'll help you know when you've been successful. Third, you want to plan your video, and this is very important. If you think of the concept of storyboarding, you want to think of that in relation to this video. Even if you just do it in your head, you want to do it so that you make sure that you've planned exactly what you want to capture video of and how you're going to use it. You'll find your project is much more successful if you spend some time on the front end. At this point, you also want to decide whether you're going to use a script, whether you're going to use self-modeling where the child is demonstrating the skill themselves, or whether you're going to have peers demonstrate the skill, and whether you're going to need to do some editing or whether you're going to try to do a one-shot capturing the behavior in one-shot video.
Hey, Anne, could I interrupt you for one more second?
Your video.
We're getting some
and
feedback
really
from your paper.
That you've decided that you wanted and doing any editing. As we go further, Jude will talk more about editing specifically and some of the strategies you can use there. The biggest thing that you want to remember in this whole video modeling process is that you want to show success. You don't want to show the child in any way failing or needing to be prompted. As much as possible, you want to show the child engaging fully in the whole skill themselves. And sometimes that requires some editing to get there. You may need to edit out some prompts and that kind of thing to make that final video the child successfully engaging in the behavior. Then we have showing the video, and actually you need to plan for that a little bit. Will it be a daily part of a lesson? Are you going to do it at a certain time of the day? How often and how long are you going to show the video? You definitely want repetition. That's one of the strengths of this strategy, is to have repetition in the playing of the video. But you also want to think about how you're going to fade and begin to have the child demonstrate this skill in a natural environment. So you want to sort of think about that during your plan. 6, you're going to monitor progress. As you go along and you're creating these opportunities for the child to practice this skill in natural environments, you want to collect some data and see is it actually transferring? Are you getting the result that you want from the video? If it's not transferring and you're not seeing it happen in the natural world, then you want to troubleshoot a little bit. Do you need to go back? Do you need to simplify things? Do you need some different video? Perhaps you need to show it more often. But you might want to, data will help you know whether this is a successful strategy or not. And finally, once you do start to see the behavior occurring, you want to fade from that video to natural prompts that are going to occur in your environment. And there's a couple of ways to do that, more than a couple really, but you could decrease the frequency of showing the video, or you could perhaps leave off the last step of the video process. There's lots of different ways to fade, and that's probably for another training altogether, but you want to think of that, and as soon as you start seeing it in the natural environment, start planning for fading so that the skill becomes really a part of the child's repertoire. So creating video modeling is really a very simple process, and I hope this gives you at least an introduction. Next, we're going to move to Jude, who is going to give you some more technical support and some particular help on how to take effective video.
Thanks so much, Amy. Good day to all of you, or evening, depending on when you're watching this. So my name is Jude Shingle. My goal is really twofold. We're going to do some practical application of video. And then we'll kind of later in the presentation talk about how to apply that to video modeling. But because video has become so prolific, this is going to be applicable. You can make a great video of your kids playing soccer. You could do a great video of your kids in your classroom. These will just be handy kind of boots on the ground techniques of how to take great video. So put your fun shoes on. Let's get going. All right. Phone. Most of us have phones that are now smartphones. I used to have a dumb phone. It's now a smartphone. This is a Samsung phone. This is an iPhone. Both take great video. Another is a point-and-shoot camera. A lot of these actually take video now as well. There are also small devices made specifically for video. These are called handheld cameras. They include a Sony Bloggie, whose sole purpose, they were meant for vlogging or video blogging. And then there's the iPad. And I want to show you all these devices because we want to use what we have. So it doesn't really matter what device you have, but just we'll use whatever you have. We'll take basic video. It doesn't have to be any high-end equipment with high-end sound. It just has to be basic, bare bones, whatever you can get your hands on. And the reason I put the price here for the iPad is because I believe strongly in the iPad. However, the cost to enter the game is a little bit steeper than these other options. And we'll talk a bit more about why I like the iPad in a second. But the important thing here is to use what you have. And so I'd imagine many of you might have access to a phone or another device, and some of these limitations might be restricted by what center you're in, and we can talk about that in the questions panel. One of the reasons I really like the iPad is because of editing. Now, editing is just a fancy term for making something look better. And so this is me on summer vacation. Believe it. Again, editing can make something look better than it was originally. And Anne had mentioned this for video modeling. It's important to show the successes and kind of edit out the mistakes. And this isn't really a reality TV show. It's a practical tool to try to increase appropriate behavior. So as best we can, we want to edit out those kind of mistakes, if you will. Now, again, one of the reasons I like the iPad is because you can both take video on it and edit natively on the screen, and then the screen's big enough so the whoever you're working with can see it immediately. It's not a tiny little screen. It's fairly big. Now, editing is kind of beyond the scope of this webinar, and I apologize because the title specifically mentioned iMovie. But again, we're going to focus on practical video, and I'll touch briefly on editing, but my philosophy is if you can keep it simple with the video, you can always learn editing later. But if you do things right on just the capturing phase, you make your life 100 times easier. So some ways to kind of keep it simple. Shoot in one take. And so what I mean by that is you hit record, you capture the actions, and then you hit stop, and that's it. So you can rehearse beforehand if you like, but try to capture it with no editing in mind. So just try to capture very, very short clips. And what's great about digital technology is you can take as many as you want and delete the ones that fail, and they will fail. And great practice is to actually delete the ones immediately after you know that they're no good. So you start and you're like, oh, that's not going to work. Delete it immediately. It saves you lots of time later having to go through all the videos. And another one, I mentioned rehearse, and also shoot in small chunks. So what I mean by this is if you were going to do video modeling of brushing your teeth, and you broke down brushing your teeth into 7 steps, I would recommend starting and stopping each step. So start, step 1, stop. Start, step 2, stop. And the reason to do this is because if you were doing 7 steps and you got all the way to step 5, and then suddenly the toothbrush fell on the ground, and you're like, oh, you don't have to start all the way over. You can just kind of repeat that step. You can edit them all fluidly together at the end if you like, but this kind of is a nice fail-safe to kind of go forward. Now editing, there's kind of 2 main operating systems in use. So there's your Windows version, and then there's your Mac operating system version. So your Windows version has Windows Movie Maker. It's a very simple editing application, and your Macintosh version or your iOS would be iMovie. Now, both are wonderful because they have really simple tutorials that you can find online. So here's a tutorial for Windows Movie Maker, and here are tutorials for iMovie. I recommend if you want to learn basic editing, they do it really simple. They keep it in 2 to 3 minute chunks. It's very easy to kind of go through and follow along. Now again, iPads are wonderful. I will give you the top 3 reasons why they're wonderful. 1, they take great video. It's very simple to do, and you can adapt them for special needs kids or anyone who has trouble. I have trouble, but adaptive equipment is very easy to incorporate with the iPad. 2, you can natively edit on there, and 3, they have nice screens so that you can immediately play back what you captured. Sound. Sound is at least 50% of a movie. Nina's not beside me. Nina, some directors say it's even 70% of a movie, believe that or not. And you know this because if you've seen Star Wars, and if you haven't, you've been looking under a rock, you know the sound.
He does that sound so well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sound is so important that it both kind of conveys moods, it conveys characters, and in the case of video modeling, it could capturing great sound is important because it's going to give you the verbal prompts or give you the kind of auditory cues for some of the behaviors that you're trying to talk about. So sound is so important that we're going to talk about microphone polar patterns. And hold your excitement because I can hear the cheers from here, all the way in Erie, PA. Now, microphone polar patterns just means how much distance does a microphone cover. And so there are basically 2 kinds of polar patterns we're going to be concerned with today. One is omnidirectional, which just means all directions. So omni means all. Omnidirectional microphones are going to capture sound in every direction. There's also directional. And directional is often referred to, the microphones are usually called shotgun mics because you're pointing at your target and it's going to capture this, essentially just what you're pointing at. So if I was pointing at Nina, I should only be able to hear Nina and not the folks who are to the left or to the right of her. If you are a visual person like myself, here are some visual descriptions. So omnidirectional, if you imagine your camera is in the middle of that circle, it's capturing in all directions. And directional, again, kind of looks like 4 ovals. The larger oval, it would be the direction the microphone's pointing in. It's going to capture a little bit side to side and a little bit behind you, but for the majority, it's going to be right in front. Now, I mentioned use what you have, and so for the vast majority of you, your kind of camera is going to be omnidirectional, which means it's going to capture everything. And you know this if you've ever tried to use your camera on a busy street and you heard not just what's in front of you, but what the cars screeching behind you and the dog nipping at your feet and anybody asking you questions. It's going to capture everything. And it does that because it's a very efficient way to capture sound. But sometimes it's really annoying. So let's do a sound workshop to kind of see how you might kind of navigate these issues with an omnidirectional microphone. So imagine we're kind of in a classroom with purple children, and we have our instructor who's kind of in light purple. And what they're holding is a device. And so they want to capture all 5 children in the room singing a song. And so this would actually be a wonderful place to stand because you are not only going to be able to see all 5 of them at once, but you'll be able to capture all the sound in the room. It's important to remember that if you have a child behind you who's asking a question like, why are you taking video, you will most likely hear them as well. So that just kind of keep in mind these distractions. Now let's say you were in the same classroom and you had the same group of students, but this time you wanted to film just one student, and this student is highlighted in green. And it's a particularly busy day and children are jumping up the walls. This would not be such a great place to focus on the sound of just this one student. So a possible solution would be to move the student or subject kind of against the wall, away from kind of the majority of the activity, and to place yourself shooting against the wall. And now your microphone should kind of be isolated in that area. And it's nice to be against the wall because some of those sound waves will actually bounce back into your microphone. Backlight. Backlight means when you take a picture and the dominant light source is behind your subject. So this can be used to really great effect. For example, here's a photo of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse. And the sunset is our dominant light source. And so because it's in front of our subjects, it kind of casts this nice silhouette. It's beautiful. It also makes Italy and other foreign places very, very nice. And backlight has the unfortunate effect of looking like this sometimes. And so in this case, the camera was trying to kind of do its best guess of what it wanted to focus on. And so it's focusing instead on the window, and it blacks out the face of the child in this photograph. Now, a lot of devices have become more smart, and you can actually tap on the screen to what you want to focus on, and we'll do a better job kind of balancing the light. But say you don't have a device that does that at all, then we could talk about ways to avoid bad backlighting. So if we were in our classroom again and we had a child who was standing in front of the window and we were filming in this direction, we are most likely going to get backlight because the dominant light source is the window, our child's in between, and then the camera's capturing. So a great solution here would be to, once again, we can move the child kind of against the wall, and we can move ourselves to film against, to face the child. And what's wonderful here is not only do you get the one light of the room, but you're getting the light from the window. So in this case, the light's working for you, not against you. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Steady camera. Sometimes when you watch a movie, you kind of want to throw up because you're seasick. It's kind of like hard to focus. This happens to me all the time. And so a couple of techniques that you can use to kind of steady your camera to kind of get a nice stable shot. One would be to, when you hold the camera, kind of take your elbows and push them against your chest. And so that kind of gives you more stability. And that way your arms aren't going to get tired, they're not going to wobble. Another option would be to kind of buttress yourself against a desk or a wall or a table. This is my wonderful pose. Another idea, and believe it or not this works, is your head is the most stable part of your body. So if you can position the device and kind of hold it against your head, it's going to be a lot more still. And if it's someone else's device, I would put on your forehead, but if it's yours, I would invite you to try this, to actually put it over your mouth, because the camera is going to be closer to your eyes, and so long as your face is facing what you want to capture, your camera will automatically capture it. And it's totally stationary. It works great if you're on a boat or anything like that, should you have highly specialized shoots. Adaptive equipment is really wonderful if you have a population that is going to have difficulty with fine motor or gross motor skills. So if you're going to be holding on to an iPad for a long time, and we just had this experience this week, it was very hard for some of our kiddos to actually hold on to the iPad. So adaptive equipment, this is an example of it's kind of like a monopod with a gooseneck. So it's very heavy base, and then you have this kind of gooseneck feature that can be articulated in any direction, and it holds the iPad. And so someone who is standing or sitting doesn't have to worry about supporting the weight of the iPad. They can just worry about touching the buttons on there. And Nina will be able to talk more about these if you have questions as to what equipment this is. You can also add adaptive switches. So this particular button is connected to the iPad via Bluetooth, and you can make it trigger the camera device on the iPad. So now you have a student who has limited range. They can actually have a say in when the camera starts or stops. Finally, the last for the practical video application is to hold your camera horizontal. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure your camera is longer than it is tall. And the reason for this is most of our devices that we watch video on now are widescreen or horizontally oriented. And so if you hold it vertical, you might notice that there's two black bars on either side. And so that is because it's trying to adjust the aspect ratio. So if you hold it horizontal, you won't get those black lines on the side. If you hold it vertical, it's going to add those black lines. So as best you can, hold the camera horizontal. Now, as far as video specific to video modeling, it's important to engage the students in the process. And one way to do that is to look for moments of choice. And so these can begin at the very early stages, such as planning. We want to do a video on how to appropriately say hi to friends in the hall. And we can brainstorm ways that we would do that. And we can come up with a list, and we can decide where in the building we should actually film that. And then beyond the planning phases, you can then pick who should be in this movie. Should we hire a camera person for free, or you can pay them high fives? And there should be there's these moments of choice throughout the process. Even if you're working with just one student, simply asking where should we be for this shot, or if you can play back the movie right after you've taken it. Do we like this video? And they might say no. It's like, okay, so we'll do it again. So kind of involving them in that process is important. There's always room behind the camera. So if you were going to do a group video modeling project and you had students who did not want to be in front of the camera, that's okay. You can have a director who's going to say action or cut, or I can't take this anymore, get me a latte. You have choice in where the camera's located. So there's ways to involve everyone. And again, conversations before and after. I love, we all love seeing pictures of ourselves. And so, so when you can immediately show what you've taken and have a conversation with the student, it's just this wonderful moment where you can, they're engaged and you can talk about the behavior that you just captured. I apologize because one of the things I wanted to talk about was actually case studies or examples of what we've done here at the BNI. And the slide that I had to kind of give pictures is gone, and I apologize. So if you put on your imagination caps, what I did want to share one particular experience, and this was washing our hands with a group of young students. And so basically, when we wash our hands, a lot of the students are kind of prompt dependent. So step on the stool, turn on the water, put soap in your hand, rub your hands together. So one thing that we have been trying, and these are nonverbal students, and so we captured both photographs and we captured video with the teacher's audio prompts. So, okay, step up to the stool, now turn on the water, and so we capture that all in video. And what we've done is we kind of, just as Anne had mentioned, we thought about, well, when in the process are we going to introduce the video modeling? And so we decided we would do it right before or while they're using the toilet, so while they're sitting, and they don't actually have to hold the iPad. We'll hold it in front of them. It actually works great because it's a quieter room. It focuses the noise. The student can just watch the video. And then immediately after, they're asked to wash their hands. And so the data that we're collecting are how many prompts do we need kind of through the process. So we're about 5 days in. So far, it's been good. The prompts have kind of slightly decreased, which is great. Sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. But that's kind of one example of a process. If you have any specific questions about how video modeling could be adapted to your environment, I'd love to hear it in the questions section. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nina Wolfhard, who will talk about kind of the technical challenges of using this equipment.
Yes, I'm the lucky one who gets to talk about the problems with technology like you saw this afternoon in that intro to our webinar. Good afternoon or good morning wherever you're watching from. I'm going to talk about some of the technology challenges and behind the scenes with projects that Anne and Jude have been working on. So the number one challenge for us has been funding for technology. So you may have this problem when you're looking for technology. What technology is out there, what's available, and what does it cost? As Jude shared with you, the iPads are very expensive, but they can do very many good things. So, we are able to get some donations and some monies through funding, and we're getting a lot of, staff to look for grants. And we're writing some grants for our technology. We're just getting out there and looking around for what's available for what we are looking for. For the funding, you also want to see what's appropriate for the students you're working with, for your school or for your agency. As Jude said, use what's available. If you have your iPhone or a smartphone, thank God he's changed from a dumb phone to a smartphone, and use what you have so you don't have to spend the monies for that type of equipment because it can be very expensive. The couple mounts that Jude showed in the PowerPoint earlier, you saw the table. There's a tabletop mount that runs around $50. You saw the gooseneck mount that runs anywhere from $100 to $200, just depending on what you're looking for. And then those wireless connections that are via Bluetooth can also be in that $100 to $200 range. So you want to be aware of the funding and the cost for the equipment that you're looking for or working with. Another challenge is selecting the appropriate device or technology or tool that you want to use. If you're working with iMovie, which is typically found on an app, you would want to be using the iPad or a tablet for that. You wouldn't be able to do that as easy on the PC. So you want to make sure that you're selecting the appropriate tools for the project that you're working on. For this project we were working on, we worked with the iPads and the apps that we had available. So you want to select the appropriate tool for the student you're working with and for the project that you're working on. Another challenge is storing space. With JPEGs and pictures and movies and all of that technology, you're getting into a lot of gigabytes. So you need to figure out where you're going to store these things. Now, we have looked into storing in Dropbox, so that's available. We've stored in iCloud. And then you're able to take those things that you've stored and also upload them to your PC. But in doing so, again, speaking of the gigabytes and how large of a file that is, you need to maybe look at adding additional space. You may need to have an additional hard drive for all of those files that you're storing. And then I just put a little picture up here on making some folders. I think Jude mentioned a little bit of labeling. Taking a picture and then deleting it if you don't like it, I totally agree with that because all you're doing is taking up space, and that again goes back to that challenge of storing space. You're going to run out of space quicker if you don't get rid of those and you end up keeping them. If you don't like it, delete it. You can take it again. And then you can also make folders and make sure that you're labeling them. Labeling is so important in this process of making iBooks and iMovies. You want to label it maybe in regards to who the student is. So maybe Johnny has a folder on the iPad and all of Johnny's movies and videos are in that folder, and it's labeled maybe per date, per project, something. You want to make sure the label is so that you can go back and figure out what project you're looking for.
Yeah, that saves you so much time.
That does save you so much time, and it will save you, the space in the long run as well. Because these things, then once you make these things, can also be downloaded. You can download them to a CD or store them in another place and get rid of that, so you can open up Johnny's files for more pictures or videos. So availability of IT support or lack thereof availability, that's the challenge. The challenge is, we have the luxury of having IT support. And we can call on them when we need help. But if you don't have technology support, then you need to be aware of the technology you're using and make sure that you're trained well enough in it so that you can help yourself if you run into a problem. Like today when we failed in the beginning. I mean, we had a couple people here that were able to help out, but if you don't have that person to help out, then you can get stuck. And I also wanted to bring this up because if you are using this as a sole project for your lesson that day, you'll want to back up, because if it doesn't work, I would hope that you would have something that would back you up in the event that doesn't pan out for you. So just a few basic maintenance things that I thought that you maybe want to be aware of. Who's going to assume the responsibility for the technology that you're using? Again, who's going to be the one that's responsible? Who's going to help you out? Do you have IT support? Are you going to be the one that's helping yourself or others? Also, where are you charging these devices? Do you have a location? Do you have a charging box or a charging cart? If you're using iPads, that is, or smartphones. And then, are they stored in a clean and safe location? Are you cleaning them? Because once the students are using them, and once you're using them, then you want to just make sure you're getting them clean so they're ready for use the next day. And then make sure they're in a safe, locked, stored area. And who's checking for updates? See, now this is another technical challenge you can run into. If you do not check for an update and your software is not up to date, you may not get the newest app that you're working with. So you want to make sure everything's up to date and ready to go for what you're doing in your project. So I just want to touch on a couple things. This picture is actually Jude Shingle. He is working with one of the students, Nick. This was last year. They were working on Book Creator. And the reason I put this picture on here was just to show that student involvement is so important. If you could see both of their faces on this picture, they're both smiling. They're so engaged in what they're doing. Nick is working on something on the iPad, and Jude's helping him. And if you could see the green screen behind, they're working with the Book Creator, Comic Strip, and iMovie app. So student involvement is very important in any of these projects. Get the students involved. Staff awareness and training. I just wanted to show this quick picture. One of our teachers is on the right, one of our students is on the left, and it's very important that you have your staff trained in what you're using, or if you are the staff. Here we've started a couple committees that meet quarterly, monthly, and we've been able to talk about what we need, like what are our needs and what do we want to do moving forward. And we've gotten our staff involved in that. You want to do that. You want to train them on the technologies that you have, because that's very important that they know how to use the technology so the student knows how to use the technology. And then maybe think about, in this group I was thinking, how could you get out there and do some of these things for what your project might be or what your plan is for technology in the future. And maybe you can just get a group together that meets informally, monthly, in your specific subject area. Maybe that could at least get you started in getting out there and looking what apps are available and getting out there and seeing what technology is available. And then most important, make sure you have the parents involved. That's where we get the digital divide between home and school and work, and the students may be doing these great things on the iMovie and iBook at school, but what are they doing to transfer that at home, and can those videos be used at home so mom and dad can help with washing our hands or using the restroom or any of that kind of stuff. So it's very important to get your parents involved, be connected with your parents. They want to be involved. We survey our parents to see what they have with technology, which I think is such a great idea, because then you're able to know what do they have when they go home. So if I'm using an iPad here, are they using a PC there, and how's that working for the student? Because that can be very confusing to a youngster if they don't know how to make that transfer from computer to iPad or vice versa. Now, I just listed a few ways that you can distribute projects, the specific projects that we're talking about today, the iMovie, not just iMovie, but certain projects. There are ways that you can distribute those and make those available to other staff or to the parents even via email, Dropbox, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I just put a few up there. And then here were a lot of words that describe technology, a lot of great words. And just a quote to end my portion of the speech here. Technology used within the classroom has the opportunity to be a game changer for the future. Isn't that the truth? Here are a few resources we've listed for today's webinar. And I believe that this PowerPoint is available to everyone. And I think we're right on time with questions.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Nina and Jude and Ann.
Lisa, or somebody's out there to help us.
I am out here to help you. I'm going to steal your screen back here. Okay, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. It makes me want to make a movie. We have reached the end of the presentation, but we do have a few minutes for questions.
Questions come in.
So attendees, if you have a question, you can type it into the question box on your attendee screen. Barber Institute, can you hear me all right?
Lisa, can you hear us?
Okay, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh.
Can you hear us, Barber Institute? We can see you. Can you hear us?
I hear them.
Barber Institute, can you hear us? We may have lost them.
I can't hear Rachel, or looks like they're talking.
We can hear you, Jude. Can you see us? Can you hear us? Let's try to, I'm going to try to type your questions into them. Let's see if we can find them.
Lisa, can you hear us now?
Okay. Can you hear me now? No, we're going to type in your questions. So we have a question. Bear with us here. I'm a slow typer. How about a very practical question?
Okay, if you type, we will read and do our best to answer.
Great. We're going to type in. A very practical question from April. Where is the microphone? On an iPad or iPhone. To avoid holding it against, to avoid,
Oh, yes, it says a very practical question. Where is the microphone on an iPad or iPhone? Actually, that's great. There's actually two microphones on an iPhone. One's kind of close to your mouthpiece, and the other one's near the top, kind of by the gosh, I'm
By the speaker or your earphone?
kind of by the
power button.
Thank you. Gosh, and on the iPad, it's very close to your speaker button, there's like a tiny dot where the speaker is, kind of where it goes out, and your microphone is very close to that as well. I wish I had one on
the lower,
point to it.
Like if the iPad's right there, is it on the lower right?
Yes.
Yes.
Lower right. That's a good question.
okay, Lisa's going to help me on this one. We have another question from Tara. Does your research talk about using video modeling to decrease compulsive behaviors? For example, Tara has a student who has to step over thresholds several times before he can exit the room. We're asking if the Barber Institute does research to support videoing his peers and himself walking directly across the threshold to decrease this re-stepping behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself an iPad. So.
Okay, we have another question. Can
Great.
you read that for me? I'm having a hard time seeing the whole question.
Does the research talk about using video modeling to decrease compulsive behaviors? For example, I have a student who has to step over thresholds several times before he can exit the room most of the time. Does the research support videoing peers and him walking directly across the threshold to decrease the re-stepping behavior?
Okay, that's an awesome question. I'm not aware of any specific research about compulsive behavior, but I definitely, as a clinician, would think that that's an appropriate use. You could use peers to show the behavior. It would probably be even more effective if you could somehow capture video of the child stepping across himself, or perhaps even edit something down. Maybe he has to, go through his process several times, but you could edit a video and create it so that it's now just he's smoothly walking into the room on the first trial. That would be an excellent use of this technique. I would definitely recommend that, and I'd be really curious as to how successful that was for you too. It's a great idea.
Thank you. We have another
Do you
question.
have any suggestions for iPad apps using green screen effect or suggestions for homemade green screens? You do.
Ooh, yeah.
He likes this one.
So actually, on the iPad, an app, iMovie, has a wonderful green screen effect. Again, I would recommend going to the tutorials on Apple's website, and you can look at it, but it has a really great native green screen app. You can use just like a green sheet or a green piece of paper if you have, I've used those kind of big rolls of green paper that you find in art rooms. And the other thing, it doesn't have to be green. It can be blue as well, as long as it is a solid color in the background and you don't have that color on you as the person. Otherwise, it will look, if you're wearing a green shirt, then it looks like there's a hole in your chest, which is really fun. And another great app is called VScope, Veriscope, and that's a free one. And you can actually see in real time the green screen being knocked out. So you don't actually have to record the video, then go into iMovie and add the green screen effect. If you record, right, you can actually see in real time the green screen effect taking place. So I would use one of those two. They work really great. I think it's VScope or Veriscope. There's a free version and there's a paid version. So I would definitely try the free version, see if you like it. And then you can step up to the paid if you would like.
I think Final Cut Pro has that too.
Yeah, oh yes,
Final Cut Pro is a good one.
Final Cut Pro is also, it's just a more expensive kind of entry fee. I think it's $300 for Final Cut Pro. Yeah. Also, while we're waiting for that, so on the iPad, your bottom is your home button. So your microphone's actually at the top of your iPad. So if you were filming like this, it's going to be on your left, well, yeah, on your left side. Is that a question?
No, I don't think so.
No, I
Have
think
another question?
I think she popped it back up to any questions.
Oh.
We can't hear that.
That looks like an old question. Can you scroll down at all, or is it just?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, here we go. Hold on.
Okay, wait, Chris.
Whoa, there's a lot of questions. Okay. Do you have any suggestions for iPad apps using green screen? We did that one. Do you have any favorite prompt or direction to help students ignore the camera and stay on task?
You know, one thing is time. The more time you use the camera with the kids, the less of a distraction it becomes. So it just kind of becomes normalized. You know, also, some of the prompts, you know, if you kind of make it more into a movie making process, so you actually say, hey, you have a job. If you are in front of the camera, you're the camera person. If you're behind using the camera, you're the camera person. If you're the student who's filming, well, then your job is the actor or actress, and so you have to stay on task. You can't be distracted by the camera. So it's kind of giving each student a role, clear expectations of that role. That helps. So I would say the two things are time. The more time you use them, the less distracting it becomes. And then give clear expectations of what your role is. And then also feed their hunger. I mean, they love to see it. So, you know, it can kind of be the carrot on the stick of, okay, if we appropriately take our video, then we can watch it afterwards. And if that doesn't happen, I'm sorry, we don't get to watch it today. That could be another way. But they're excited because they really want to see what was taken. If you have any other suggestions.
No, I thought that was great.
Okay.
So this next question is, in your experience, what has been the response to video modeling by students with autism? Are they drawn to it automatically, or do they have to be coaxed into it? Then does it become a negative crutch for them as they develop?
Our experience is that they are directly drawn to it, and they love it. We've had no issues at all with kids not being interested. I can't think of a single child who wasn't. Have you, Jude, maybe?
I've had kids who weren't interested in the video part. They were much more, they wanted the sensory experience of interacting with something.
Okay.
They didn't enjoy just watching themselves. So in that case, the social interaction was important. So watching a video with the student and talking about what you actually saw in the video helps. Also, when we created digital books using an app called Book Creator, and there was the physical element of having to turn pages.
Mm-hmm.
That was attractive to some students and a lot more interactive than passively watching a video. So I think you could find a way to actively engage them on video. So that could be a person actually talking through what was seen on camera, or maybe you watch the video and immediately act out what you saw on video, kind of a way to make it more engaging.
And it may have some relation to functioning level of the child, too. If you're looking at a nonverbal child who has trouble attending to anything, they may have more of a challenge attending to this, too. But kids who are more functional and engaged in the making of the video and that sort of thing, I think have been really fascinated by it.
Yeah, by and large, it's very quick, easy buy-in.
Yeah. And as far as becoming prompt dependent on the video, I think, again, that is really, as teachers, if we're aware and cognizant always of our fading process and paying attention to when the child starts to use it in a natural environment, and we systematically fade our prompts back appropriately, that helps. So I think that's kind of on us to make sure that we're doing that at the right moment. Prompt dependency often results if we allow the child too much time with the prompt. So we have to really systematically pull that back as soon as they're able to independently show the skill.
And our students are very responsible for the devices. They come down and get their devices in the morning, and they're solely responsible for those devices. I can say that we have over 100 iPads, and we've only, knock on wood, had one that has had some rough time. But otherwise, they're very responsible for the devices.
Can I also say, if you're gonna protect your device, if this is an iPad specific request, and you pick your case, you want to pick. The cloth ones are fine. The plastic ones seem to work better because they don't tend to slip off and cover the camera. Sometimes, as they age, it doesn't adhere as well, and then eventually the case kind of slides over top of the camera, and that just kind of makes everyone frustrated. That's just something to keep in mind as well.
Okay.
And with that, we will conclude our webinar, not without technical difficulties, but certainly very practical, useful information. We do have a short survey for all participants, which will open when you exit out of the attendee panel. We greatly appreciate your thoughtful responses. And with that, I would like to thank you for joining us and thank the Barber National Institute. If you have any questions or comments regarding this or any webinars, please send them to Lisa D'Amico, our webinar organizer. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.